So the story of Flowform really starts with John Wilkes, and before that with George Adams and Theodore Schwenk. Anyway, this Flow Science Research Institute was set up, and its purpose in Germany, its purpose was to work out how to make holy water, H-O-L-Y, sacred water. How to make such high quality water that it becomes holy, like Lourdes water. Now that has been confirmed to me by one of the recent directors. It's sort of been forgotten maybe, but that was their original aim, how to understand and especially create from normal water the very best quality water. And so Theodor Schwenk's, the industrialist, of course, funded it, and the mathematicians was one of the Ungers, and I'm pretty sure, and certainly George Adams, who was a half German, half British, an Australian mother, scientist, chemist, and brilliant mathematician. And he developed a geometry of energy coming from the cosmos. Absolutely brilliant. It's since been taken further by Nick Thomas and others. And so his task was to generate technology based on path curve surface over which water would flow. And the theory, or the hypothesis, was that this special nature type of shape would radiate energy, enable energy to come into the water. It's since been proven again by Benny and others with a little amphora. So these path curve surfaces are found in nature, especially in embryos, eggs, leaf buds, and so forth.
Yeah, and in some river streams.
Yes, and the movement of the spirals. Anyway, this is the longer story. I'm sorry. So this is the story of the Flow Research Science Institute, and George Adams invited John Wilkes to come as a 30-year-old to work with him, because John was a Royal Academy of Art sculptor and understood enough of the maths to be able to turn George Adams' equations into shapes. And they ran water over those shapes. They could only run the water over once, then it had to come back up, and it wasn't a continual enough flow.
Yeah, without pump and
so that started in 1961, and George Adams died in 1963. So the work stopped. There was nobody who could do the mathematics to create the surfaces which would have become the technology they were seeking. And so this Flow Science Research Institute reverted to the task of Theodor Schwenk, which was to work out how to find out if the water was improved or not. And they focused on education. So then John stopped that work, but in 1970 he was invited back by Theodor Schwenk to tidy up the research and what have you. And he had already been doing a lot of research into nature, because he decided that nature was his teacher for form and metamorphosis. As a sculptor, he was like, nature knows it all. It's just phenomenal what nature does when you look into embryology, when you look into the metamorphosis of plants, and it's phenomenal. And John spent 15 years studying everything from the mathematics of crystals, the metamorphosis and shapes of plants, and animal physiology and bone structures. And when I was working with him in the sculpture course there in the 1970s, we were being sent carcasses from the London Zoo. I'm probably one of the only people who's made lion soup with a skull and a vertebra of a lion. We boiled it up.
Oh.
And then we buried it, and the worms did the rest of
Cleaned
the
it
work.
up, yeah.
And we got it out, and then we were looking, llamas, lions, crocodiles, just so much, and comparing the movement and the way that all the bone structures went. So he was doing this sort of work, and then with the human being. John became the expert and saved Rudolf Steiner's Plasticine models of the representative man sculpture. So he went back, and he had been thinking on this question: what can we do to improve water through dynamic flow? And he thought, well, we take the meander. What happens if I give that a mirror image? So that's, your meander's like this, and then if you do a mirror image, it goes like that. And so he had some metal lead walls on a flat sheet, on a gradient, and he put these lead walls in this.
They are very flexible
shape.
And so.
Flexible,
yeah.
And then he ran water through it and into a container and pumped it back up, and is moving the lead walls around. And a moment came when, instead of it just flowing out like this, so if we've got the gradient coming this way for the camera, that's coming down, and a moment came when the water flipped over, went around, and then came back on itself, and the inflow was doing this. There's a moment when the gradient is just right, and it went like that, and then like that, and like that, and it's a heart pulse. The water coming out goes, and it goes through the figure eight, which is what happens here. And he was like, my goodness. He went off and found Theodor Schwenk and brought him to. Theodor Schwenk was like, you've just found the rest of your life's work. And John was 40 at that time. April 1st on 1970.
Really?
Yes, John was like, he felt like, he was the blessed fool. So that's sort of the Parsifal thing, isn't it? Blessed fool. So then he started, but his sculpturing ability was phenomenal. Within a year, he was making these absolutely beautiful sculptural pieces with this figure eight. And so the thing about Flowform, as it's called, Flowform is really a brand name. What it is, it's not the water flow, it's the surface. So it's a flow surface technology, which is also artistic, but it's also psychologically very calming. It brings people into their rhythmic system. All the thoughts calm down, the metabolism rests. So these feeling like ADHD, wanting to rush around, people just calm down.
Just by looking to this.
Looking and listening. The Mozart effect.
Yeah.
The Mozart effect, or the Baroque music effect, is proven to just calm people down. You can focus better.
Yeah.
And you get enlivened, but calm. And this figure eight flow does that. We did a project in Denmark at a hospital with Alzheimer patients, and I did one here also. And the patients would come and just sit by it, and just go all quiet and peaceful. That's what nature does. But when you bring it into this heart pulse, a subtle heart pulse with the chuckling of the music, it just calms people down. We've done a lot of kindergarten projects, and children who are shy wake up and become more social, and those who are a bit chaotic, they get more focused. Schools love them. So we have multiple uses. One, the psychological, peaceful, calming function, psychological function you call it, and then a second function which is for landscape, swimming pools, and beautify the garden, bring in the birds, bring in the bees, and
But the quality of living water.
yeah, with the quality, and it radiates out as well.
Yeah.
Then we've got a technical purpose, which is improve the water for your plants, for animals, for stagnant ponds, and factories and stuff. A fourth one is major projects for city centres, but I've stopped doing those because it's too much work. But we have done those.
And what do you think is the best thing to do for future? The best way to go with your flow forms? Where do you have the most resonance?
Yes, so it's interesting you use the word resonance because that brings us back to the research. But looking at the question from a business point of view, we need to focus on porcelain, I think, and the ceramic, where I've got an example here. This is just a prototype, and a small one. And with this, we can produce these in large numbers and ship them anywhere in the world in containers. Yeah. And then, as a business, we start to make enough money to become self-sufficient. So with this, it's possible, and we've already done it prior to COVID, with larger forms, to be able to produce these in container loads. And so from a business point of view, that's the direction we need to go, because, we think there's a market here. Certainly we know in China and throughout Asia, the figure eight flow and the heart pulse and feng shui, and we've sold 500 or more of them into China. People love them. Have to be high quality.
They understand what's behind.
And they can feel the energy as well.
Yeah.
Many of them.
Yeah.
It also happens with organically minded and meditative yoga type folk in the West. They see it and go, oh, I love it. And so with this, we can generate a reasonable business which can grow a cash flow to support what we really want to do, which is do research into water and find ways of maintaining or improving water quality. The Flowform in porcelain can be used for home drinking water. We're working on a product for that, but it's primarily the psychological function. But Benny Johansson has also shown that when you breathe the air, which has humidity in it, which has become coherent, you become...
It's also different.
You become more healthy. He's done research into that.
Yeah.
When his research was using high coherent water, in other words, highly structured water, living water, and you water a plant with it, and the plant evaporates that water, it goes into the air, and when people breathe that air, a whole bunch of physiological functions improve, and that's been researched to a scientific level.
Every office should have
exactly.
such a flow form.
Yeah.
And the smallest unit looks like this.
Yes, it'll be a little bit bigger when we're working on that at the moment.
It's more effective.
A bit higher because it's going to have more water in it.
Mm-hmm.
That one is a bit too. This one there's a bit too low down. You see, there's a hole at the back.
You can
And so
put
the
your
water is
cup
only
in
here.
and drink on a desk.
That's the other thing that we're working on one at the moment, which is two-part. You'll be able to lift the top part off and have a vase underneath, no hole in the back.
Yeah.
And we've got this part lower, so you can be able to put in a bamboo in here, and it comes out into a jug.
Yeah, perfect.
So we're working on that at the moment with a wonderful 15th generation family porcelain factory in North Vietnam.
Yeah. And now this is ceramic,
Yeah.
and porcelain is like our dishes.
Porcelain is a high quality ceramic.
Yeah. And shrinks not so much, so.
No, it shrinks the same amount. So
Oh.
so with the ceramic, these are exceedingly difficult to make. People say, "Oh, you're going to get copied." I just laugh in the face now, because we've spent quite a few years trying to get these to be made so that, you know.
We say good luck to
Yeah,
all
yeah. Go and try it. Go and try it. I can't even copy myself, let alone other people who. The thickness of the glaze will change the water flow.
Ah, wow.
So it's super complex.
That's sensitive.
It shrinks and it slumps and it won't work. So we have to make the master so it doesn't work.
What happens when it doesn't show the right flow? The 8 is not showing up, or something like
Well,
that?
then it's just your normal water feature, just trickling water or splurting water. It's just doing nothing. It's not really like nature. Then the aim for us, there's so much control we can get into it. So in a prototyping process, you might make it in plaster, it's 20% bigger, and then we take, when molds are made and it's liquid clay, and then and poured out, it's dried, put in the kiln, comes out, it doesn't work. Then I have to make adjustments to the fired part, so it does work, and then we transpose those adjustments back into the plaster of Paris, and might do that 6 or 7 times.
That's a lot of work behind.
And the high quality prototyping masters in Vietnam, who are just so superb at their work, cannot do it. I worked with one factory, they tried for 2 years and their guy could not do it.
So they go on with frogs, meditating frogs.
They do. There are other things.
Yeah, and Buddhas.
But because I'm trained in this, and there are only 4 or 5 of us around the world from John Wilkes, having worked with John, and having made a lot of them over the years, I can do it. But it's really like making a violin. How are you going to make a violin so it sounds really good? So that's the quality side of it. Now, from your question, what's the direction? The main direction is how, over into the future, are we going to be able to be one group amongst many who really can improve water quality? Because the way it's going, let's be optimistic, by the end of this century, water's not going to support life. And, that's very serious.
Nature needs more time to revive the water than we use it.
Yeah.
And so we have to look after our negative impact.
Absolutely. Water, nature, as we know, responds. If you make a marine reserve area, it bounces back. But all the plastics is a major issue. So, but I'm talking about the actual energetic oxygen, life-supporting quality of water. So that like I was saying before, there are three major issues with water. First one is that we're all very aware of is pollution, and that can be inorganic, in other words, not going to break down easily, and chemical and so forth, plastics, or organic, which is effluent, effectively. And so that's a problem for water, because water can, given time, can deal with effluent, but it can't deal
with
really
the amount
with
of effluent.
it's just phenomenal what we're doing. So that's pollution is one problem with water. Second problem is not enough of it or too much. And with the weather patterns becoming chaotic, beginning to go in that direction, when you get a flood, it's a major flood often. You know, hurricanes are now needing a level 6, which is unheard of 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's because the seas are rising, and so there's more power, the temperature's rising, more power going into the hurricanes. And the other side is drought. And so that's a huge problem, especially if this Atlantic current breaks down, which is not far off doing. We don't know when it's going to happen, but if we continue the way we are, it will break down, and that will result in bigger floods and greater droughts and major temperature fluctuations. So that's the second one, drought or flood. And the third one is stagnant water, and that's what we can help with. Stagnant water is water sitting around, not moving. Nature improves this quality of water through dynamic flow, and also a certain amount, of filtration as it sinks down into the ground, comes back up, evaporation, comes down as rain. But running in between is dynamic flow. And that is very complex with all sorts of vortices and rubbing, laminar flow. A very active stream will be stronger through the middle and slower on the outside. And actually it's made up of millions of little laminar sheaths that are rubbing against each other because they're going at different speeds.
In the water?
In the water. What happens inside the water? We stand on the stream and it goes along. Occasionally we see a little vortex and go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
But the water's moving at different speeds within it. And it's called the laminar flow, laminates. And when a river collapses in on itself, it gets faster on the outside, slower in the middle, and you get different sediment. Schauberger worked on that with his river fins. So then you've got the vortices and water coming up against rocks are doing these, and they're everywhere. And then you get waterfalls, chaos, and so the stream or the river's doing three types of movement. One is the laminar flow, which is usually straightish, and the second one is a meandering, which goes into vortices, and the third one is this chaotic flow, either waterfall or it goes off to the side and just sort of loses its impulse and fades out as a movement. So those three aspects, all of it is treating water.
In a different way?
Yeah, and it's the dynamic flow. Yeah. And this oxygenates and increases the structure, though we prefer to talk about quantum coherence, where highly coherent water is in tune with universal energy, effectively. And this universal energy, as a light wave, is coming in as a particle into the water, continual exchange of waves and particles, particle being matter, waves being energy, and they're continually interchanging at a high harmonic rate. That is a high coherence, quantum coherence of water. And that's the research we did with Benny Johansson, published in Jerry Pollock's Water Journal, Scientific Water Journal.
So what now can people do in their space, in their garden, but to improve this situation?
Well, we have our Flowform technology, which can bring this dynamic flow, as I described it, combined with the figure eight and the heart pulse. So what John used to say, he died in 2011, just coming up to the age of 80, and he used to talk about how Flowform brings what I just described in a stream into a man-made vessel, combined with the figure eight and the heart pulse, which is what happens within living organisms. You know, even grass has got a heart pulse. There's no heart. Our cerebrospinal fluid has a pulse. It's not affected by our heart. Our lymph, as it moves through our body, has a pulse, not to do with the heart. Trees have a pulse. Everything living has a pulse. The heart comes into play in biological evolution when the organism becomes complex, super complex, and it needs an organ to maintain the rhythmical flow. In the embryo there's rhythm, and the rhythm creates the heart organ. The organ
all plays together in the way,
it's rhythm,
like an orchestra.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, quantum physicists I've talked with about water, they go, but you shouldn't really be talking about structured water. That's a theoretical approach, and it's valid and interesting. They said water should really be understood in terms of music. It's so responsive. Water's accepting these waves of energy and information from all sorts of different sources, and using spectrographic analysis, you know, you can pick up what light waves are coming from planets or distant suns, and astrophysicists can theoretically work out what elements are on those exoplanets.
And you find it in water?
No, you find it in the light waves coming from the planets, and they can read it. I'm not a scientist, so I'm using my own language, a bit like a barcode at a supermarket.
Yeah.
And they go, oh my goodness, this is hydrogen on this exoplanet. That's interesting. There's oxygen on this exoplanet because it's in the spectrographic analysis of the light. And they go, that means there could be water. And so there are a number of identified potential water planets outside our solar system. This is how they know it, from reading the light signatures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's called spectrographic analysis.
So you can have an imprint in our earthly substance from these light waves from our planet.
Everything gives off a light wave. Everything gives off a light wave. And water is like, photons, interesting.
Yeah.
Water is a substance which picks all of this up, and I'm personifying it, okay? So, you know, does water go, oh, interesting? From my point of view, yes. But scientifically, no. But nevertheless, water can accept all of this information, and you can filter it all out as a matter, but the light waves stay in the water. This has been proven. So gold mines, for instance, they use cadmium, is it? And various other terrible poisons.
Arsenic?
Yeah, could be arsenic as well, or arsenic. And you filter it all out, but that is still homeopathically, the information as a light wave is still in the water. And it's been proven by Guardici, There's
A Russian
no, he's an Italian quantum
Italian.
physicist, Del Guidice, who's died, and he's a Nobel Prize winner in science. And that when you run the water through a vortex, it wipes all the past information, and it's a reset.
This is part of the steering process for the preparations.
Yes,
If you create
exactly. You
by
do
hand
that.
this vortex.
We
Yeah.
use Flowform for that as well, which is
Yeah.
another whole story. It's been shown to work very well. You get a vortex here,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
get an opposite vortex on the other side, and you get chaos as well. Yeah, the stirring process is to waken up the winter energies in the biodynamic 500.
Yeah.
So coming back to this research on the quality of water, too much or not enough water, that's an issue that human beings and nature has to deal with. Pollution, it's not the water, it's what's in the water, you know. And usually with water quality testing, it's like what are the pollutants in the water and what's the oxygen level. So, but that's like going to a doctor and the doctor goes, oh, nice clothes. Have you got a wallet or a purse? What's in it? And never asks you about yourself. That's what we do with water. We go, what's in the water? What? Whereas what we're like is, what is the water? What's the state of the water? Take all the stuff out. That's just loose change.
Yeah.
What's the water?
Yeah.
And that was our question when we started doing this research from Jan Capion, professor in Oslo. He was like, that's what, and he was a friend of John Wilkes. So the question was, how can we find out about the water, not what's in the water, but what the water is? And so we had to turn to, eventually, to Benny Johansson and his infrared imaging with the complex mathematical analysis, both scientifically proven, to give a measurement of the quantum coherence of the water, because stagnant water, it sort of falls out of its relationship with universal energy. This is 100-year-old science. And remember, me talking about universal energy is not blah blah, hug a tree, woo-woo stuff. This is Einstein.
Yeah.
This is how the bomb came about, you know.
Yeah.
E equals mc squared is energy and time are the same thing. Time and energy. Matter is energy. If we can open up a tiny bit of matter, it'll give a huge amount of energy. He said that. And so a lot of people need to catch up with the last 100 years of science. They're still learning 19th century science at school. And then they go, well, you're talking about universal energy. What are you on about, man? This is crazy, you know, are you a hippie or something? No, this is 100-year-old science. Okay, I've said that. So this universal energy, which is the quantum field, is everywhere. It's what keeps us alive. We are, according to Jerry Pollock, Professor Gerald Pollock, look him up on YouTube, we're 99% water if we count the molecules in us, 70% if we count the weight of water in us. But we are effectively water in a skin, in a physiological shape, which has a metabolism, which has a rhythmic system, which has a nervous system. And if we had time, I could describe to you how water is, in effect, the original living organism, because it has a metabolism. It can digest and break down.
Water can digest.
Yeah. Water. There's a Professor Chaplin at the South Bank University in London, who has been collecting scientific anomalous behavior of water characteristics. In other words, characteristics of water which cannot be explained by modern science. And he's up to 76 at the last count. So, for instance, water expands when it shrinks and becomes lighter. Nothing else does it. That's number one. It goes on and on. So water becoming this. I've lost my thread a little bit, but
it's a being in itself.
Yeah, well, that's right. This threefold aspect of water.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I think everything is a being, because everything is just following verbs and syntax and language. If something is, it's being. And if we follow that far enough, we can find its being. That's another whole thing to do with spiritual science. There's a different type of science which uses trained awareness as cognitive proprioception to enter into phenomena and find higher dimensional realities, which is a sort of sister of quantum physics, because they're talking about higher dimension.
And perhaps in this place we meet holy water.
That's this
comes
being.
Back to the question.
Well done.
Was all in the start.
Yeah, they knew about this being. The being of water is such a kind, generous, completely rule-breaking being. And so water, this is one of these anomalous behaviors. Water is a powerful acid, quotes, because you can put, I think it's 80 plus basic elements into it, and it will break it down. I know there are 103, or there used to be before Glenn Atkinson got stuck in, and other people started adding to the element table. But if we just say 100 plus elements exist in the world that as we know it, if you put 80, there are about 80 of them, that if you just put into water and come back in 5 minutes or 3 years or whatever, it won't be there. It's just been dissolved by water.
And disappeared into nothing?
Well, it becomes colloidal or whatever. It goes into the water as a mineral additive to the water.
Mm-hmm.
Water digests. So when water's moving through, it's picking up from the picking up from the rocks. Water wearing down mountains over millions and millions of years. It's wearing it down. It's gathering it. It moves through nature. It's carrying substances. Mm-hmm. We eat stuff. It goes into our stomach. I know it's acid, but there's all of this liquidity in us. It carries. In nature, water with rivers and through the ground, it's picking up all these nutrients and it's making it integral into the water and carrying it, and then it gets drunk by plants through the roots, by animals through their mouths, and
goes into the rain.
Yeah, it comes back. Yeah. The rainwater tends to be distilled. It comes down as sort of semi-distilled state. Anyway, so water is a fantastic metabolic actor in nature. It's picking up nutrients and distributing them effectively through this ability to absorb them. And then if we look at cluster structures and all of these fine lines, a bit like the roots of fungi, out like this. That's what happens in water. The cluster structures of the water molecules, they join up and they become lengthened and enriched. And that's what people are talking about, that's highly structured water. It's these cluster structures They're like little rootlets of hexagonal molecular structure all joining in, and this enables it to, according to this way of thinking, gather in more energy, more information. They're like nerve systems running through the water. So it has a nervous system. And then the rhythmic system I've already described. It's absolutely essential. Water's capacity to respond rhythmically to impulses is the fundament of all embryology, which is just magic. How do these organs come about? It's not little DNA things going blip, blip, blip. You know, it's like saying, how did St. Paul's Cathedral get built? Because the bricks send out messages, you know. Okay, I don't really follow that. DNAs, we know, can be moved and manipulated, and it's real. I'm not against it. But I think, theoretically, there are much greater forces at work. Intelligence and cosmic intelligence, cosmic energies, and so forth. And I might add that Max Planck and Einstein believed in this themselves. They had seen so much of nature. They said there is clearly some great intelligence at work in it. It's a type of God. They didn't think it was a personal God that had a particular interest in you or me or Ursula. But they knew that there was some vast intelligence operating. That's part of modern quantum physics. So what we want to do is to find ways of improving that type of water quality. There are plenty of people working on filtration and flood control and what have you. Our focus with the Foundation for Water and here in New Zealand, the Healing Water Institute, is to get to understand better the energetic and oxygenated, which is part of the energy, water quality as water is itself, and then further develop technologies which people, coming back to your question, can have in their home, in their garden, on their farm. So that the water they've got there is this fantastic dynamic water which the animals can drink and feel better, the fish can swim in and feel better, humans can drink and breathe, the grass and so forth, the subsoil and the microorganisms. And it can be all enjoyed as this beautiful sculpture at the same time. John Wilkes came up with this most wonderful biomimicry technology which combines beauty, therapy, technology, all in the one thing, which is what nature does.
It's not necessary to create a machine like we do this often and convert water technically into something.
Exactly. This is a genuine biomimicry, and the Dutch, who are so good with water at a technical level, when they're treating, for instance, a town's effluent, will talk about technical water and natural water. So the effluent is carried in the water, the effluent stripped out of it, the water is then treated in this way and that way through machinery, and that's technical water. But they know that if you take technical water and put it into nature, nature's still got more work to do because of these vortices and the movement, and so then they tend to, where they can, run it through a marshland which is open for people to walk. And in the town of Surendonk, we have a Flowform cascade about 40 metres across with 700 figure eights in them at a 1 in 20 gradient. And this was done by Palfendijk and Hans van Schloss. What we're hoping to do is with these sort of forms, and also with a ceramic which would be like a taller version of this for drinking water, is to have it set up so that people can have in their own home, so this goes like that, people can have in their own home a living water, scientifically proven, high coherent water source. Just filter it from the kitchen tap, put it in here, run it for 1 hour, there it is. It's water as good as from a mountain stream or off a glacier.
And you would say if you let it run through 1 hour?
1 hour.
It's what you recommend, not 5 minutes or something?
I would do it for 1 hour.
For 1 hour?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And
people will love it.
You can taste the difference. Pets stop drinking out of the toilet and come to drink out of this. I had a friend in Ukraine whose daughter was Down syndrome, and they were getting her most wonderful water from spring near the forest, and bringing it back, and they gave her some and treated it through Flowform. So it had these two things, and she didn't know the difference. She tasted, Flowform.
Wanted this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we know from pets, and we know fish, absolutely, when you treat the water they're swimming in. I had a friend or a client who bought a single landscape form about this big and put it by his fish pond. The fish was swimming around like this, and it was stagnant, and he said these are goldfish, and he got the water running, and he said they were trying to leap up. The goldfish behaving like a trout. He said they're trying to leap up into the water source, where it's coming from. He said he'd never seen that before.
There was a puddle in there.
We just got so used to having stagnant, low quality water.
Yeah.
I had an experience long ago in my 20s of going in a little boat underneath the Southern Alps by Lake Wanaka. They have underground small lakes underneath the mountain. You can walk and you get in the boat and you go in glowworms and like Waitomo caves. And we went in, and I reached over and picked up a handful of water and drank it. And my whole body, the moment it touched my tongue, no time to swallow, my whole body just went ka-ting like this. And now I know that's this entanglement, quantum physics. All the liquid in my body just retuned to the better liquid.
Wow.
That's entanglement. And fortunately with water always chooses the better option.
To come into the better state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't provide you with science behind that, but I know this from my observations and from testing water myself. If you give water, poor quality or high quality water, and then you've got the water in there, because water has been proven scientifically to respond to other water at a distance. Even homeopathic water at a distance, this water will pick up the waves and the information. And if you put poor quality water, higher quality water, and the test water, the water doesn't like that, the water there, it'll pick up the better one.
Mm-hmm.
It won't come, won't, it doesn't, it makes the good choices.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we need to do. First of all, the first thing that anyone who's interested in water is your own inner response. We don't need machinery, I agree. John Wilkes' Flowform is a modern eco machine in that it provides a surface for this combination of nature's dynamic flow and the heart rhythm and the figure eight.
I think for most of our purposes, it's enough to filter and then to let it go to a restructuring process.
Yes. Yeah. It restructures and it opens up to universal energy. And what we discovered with Benny's research, and I can send you
this would be great.
Yeah, I'll send you the actual paper and the translation of the actual paper. And then my attempt to translate it again down to some understandable language.
Yeah.
That the water, when it becomes restructured, it only becomes restructured because it's become more coherent. That means in harmony with universal energy. And when the Flowform water flow, as if it's smooth flowing, it run for an hour, it can become a living system. He was pointing this out to me, that this living system means you have some water even when it's not going through the figure eight, and it's so in tune with universal energy that it's continually bringing in the universal energy waves as particles, and the sort of older particles going out to be renewed. It becomes a living system, and that has excess energy which it sends out to the surroundings, and the things, and everything there with water,
other beings.
And the other beings pick it up and go, preaching. And he says that's what, when you're alive, you're a living system which has more energy than you need. And so with Flowform, we're turning a body of water into a living system which generously gives off extra energy.
Can you see this energy?
Jerry Pollack talks about a sort of a blue colour that he occasionally can see around his EZ water exclusion zone.
Yeah, radiation.
Now it depends, some people see more than others. So that's another whole conversation into what is perceiving higher dimensions. Because we've got the three-dimensional world, height, width, length, but then there's space-time continuum. So time is energy. So then there's the fourth dimension is energy, which expresses itself as a flow of time. So fourth dimension is energy, and some people can perceive that. And then there's a fifth dimension, which is made of light, and that's to do with consciousness. And consciousness is thinking, feeling, and willing, effectively.
It's a good explanation. So.
Then there's a sixth dimension, which is made of love, and that is being. And that's synonymous with spirit. So, and for people who are into anthroposophical things or spiritual things, consciousness is the astral world. Energetic or the etheric world, astral world, consciousness made of light. And then the world of being is different. And if you look into ancient wisdom of the East, because that's, and also indigenous cultures, it's in the realm of being, the sixth dimension of love, which is spirit. Spirit and being are the same thing. And that's where thinking is pure awareness. Awareness doesn't rabbit on trying to work things out. Awareness is intuitive, and intuition is defined or characterized as direct knowing without intermediate steps of logic. So if one has awareness freed from consciousness, because it's awareness that notices what we're thinking, what we feel, what our will impulses are, it's awareness. If we can free awareness, Eckhart Tolle talks about this.
It's perhaps some call it the observer.
Yes, exactly. The witness, the observer,
Yeah.
the being within. If we can free that so that our thoughts are not continually banging around like a squash court, balls bouncing around, if we can slow them down, what's left? Awareness.
Yeah.
And awareness is inherently spiritual because it comes from our higher self, our being. And so that's the spiritual science. If we can work with that, then we've got a way through, because I think then that's what John Wilkes did, and he came up with this modern technology. I think that's what Tesla was doing, it's what a whole bunch of people have done.
Yeah, to bring new creations into the world.
And we need to look at nature. How does nature do this? If we ask nature and we're working intuitively, nature will tell us. That's what John did.
Yeah.
Except he did it through action. He had these questions, he thought, travelled in his mind and in his actions. And then he put this up and suddenly, bang, there it was. And so our aim is to continue this technology into the future, because I think it's one of, I hope, many different modern biomimicry technologies with which we can help heal the planet. The planet's a mess, it's going to get worse, but maybe over 100 or 200 years we can set things right if we can find a way of living together with it and ourselves.
Yeah.
That sounds like a full stop.
Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking too.